Well, hello and welcome to another guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsal, and today I have a treat for you. I have a lawyer, I don't know if she goes by business coach, but somebody who has entered into the foray of helping lawyers achieve success in her own unique way. And I'm really excited to highlight her, but also tap her brain and her energy and figure out how we can extract some value for you, our listeners, and walk away from this with some new to-do item, action item that you can implement in your business. Our guest today is Laura Cowan. And Laura is the founder of 2 Hour Lifestyle Lawyer, as well as the law office of Laura Cowan in New York City. She's an estate planning attorney, and her company helps lawyers make $10,000 plus a month doing virtual estate planning, working just 2 hours a day. So a lot of lawyers are realizing that lifestyle is really what's important to them, and having time freedom, besides for financial freedom, probably just as important or more important than the financial freedom piece. And we're all trying to achieve that. So how do we unlock it? How do we make it happen? Laura is going to share with us today how to do that. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts and opinions about this, so I'm excited to dig in.
Awesome. So before we do that, a lot of our listeners haven't heard of you. They don't know who you are. Give us the broad strokes, the story behind how you ended up getting to where you are, how became an attorney, grew your practice, started 2 Hour Lifestyle Lawyer. Any part of that story that you want to share, give us a little bit more color to who you are.
Yeah, so I'm an estate planning attorney based in New York City, and I opened my practice in late 2016. I only do estate planning, wills, trusts. That's kind of my bread and butter. And I've been doing that here in New York City for almost 7 years now. And I've been pretty successful, and I've done a lot of interesting things here in a very competitive legal market. And the reason I launched the 2 Hour Lifestyle Lawyer is because I noticed, especially post-COVID, a couple of things really. First of all, there's a lot of attorneys that are looking to add estate planning as a practice area because you can do it virtually now. It's a great practice area in a lot of ways, right? And it's always been a really good practice area in a lot of ways, especially for entrepreneurial attorneys. But it's even better now because we can literally do it from anywhere. And this is a really big shift. I've done estate planning for about 3 years pre-COVID, and I did estate planning, 3 years post. And it's really like night and day because now we're allowed to do everything via Zoom, right? So a lot of lawyers are wanting to add this in as a practice area for that reason. And then the second piece, and this is what we kind of gets to the 2 Hour Lifestyle Lawyer piece, is that just like you said, a lot of lawyers, I think, are starting to realize, a lot of people in general are starting to realize the long hours aren't worth it. And we're all trying to move towards having a better lifestyle. And I don't really think that anyone up until now has ever really said to attorneys, it's okay if you don't want a 9-figure practice. It's okay if, you don't have to work full time. You can use your law degree. You can do interesting work that benefits people. You can get paid well for it. And it's something that you can do part-time if that's what you want. And of course, if you want to work full-time or you want to work more than 2 hours a day, that's an option as well. But the 2 Hour Lifestyle Lawyer is a combined course plus group coaching that teaches attorneys how to have a virtual practice. And we've got people in our course who are brand new to estate planning, and we've got people who've been practicing for 30 years, and they're all finding value with the course.
Okay, so let me unpack this a little bit. What are the main ingredients to be able to work 2 hours a day, and what kind of income is possible for somebody who's buying into this way of running their business?
Yeah, so there's 2 things that we really teach in the course to demonstrate how to get down to a couple of hours a day. And one of them is educating your prospects in a group setting. So the thing about estate planning is that I like to think of it as being kind of the exact opposite as personal injury, for example. Personal injury, you want to see as many people as possible. You want to get those leads in the door because most of them aren't going to have a case. And every meeting that you have with each prospect is going to be a little bit different because you've got to figure out the facts of the case. Well, this estate planning is the exact opposite, right? Everyone needs your services. And there's a big education component involved with estate planning. Most people don't understand why they need an estate plan, why they can't just do it themselves. So what that means is that if you're having one-to-one consultations, you're going to be saying the same thing over and over again. And anyone who's listening to this, who's an estate planning attorney, knows how that is, right? So what you want to do is peel off that education component and move it into a group setting, which is a webinar or a seminar. So instead of taking, 10 hours to educate 10 prospects, you take 1 hour to educate 10 prospects. So that's the first piece of it. And then the second piece is, what can you automate? What can you delegate? What can you outsource to a paralegal? A lot can be automated, delegated, outsourced. Now, I'm not proposing that you shirk your responsibility as an attorney. You still have to do the counseling, and of course the documents need to be drafted and reviewed properly and all of that. But a lot of what we do in estate planning can and should be done by someone else. So those are the pieces that I think our course is a little bit different from others. We're not just teaching you, this is how you get the revenue, this is how you get the leads. We do teach that, but we're also teaching the flip side, which is what can you automate, what can you outsource, and then just also to think about what kind of a life and what kind of a practice do you want to have? I mean, it's funny that every now and then I get someone who posts on one of my Facebook ads or my Instagram ads, 6 figures is a piece of cake, 9 figures is the goal. And I literally have someone write that a couple of days ago, and I don't normally respond, but this time I did. And I was like, 9 figures actually isn't the goal for a lot of attorneys. 6 figures isn't even the goal. If, I ask my students, I ask people, what would you ideally like to make so that you can actually have a nice living, but also be able to go coach your daughter's soccer team? And the numbers I hear are, I'd be thrilled just to make 10 grand a month. I'd be thrilled to make 20 grand a month and also have a life. So that's what we're doing in our program.
So walk me through the business model for somebody who wants to make 20 grand a month. And I mean, that's profit, right? Like they want to earn, their personal income needs to be 20 grand a month. How do they get there? How many clients do they need to serve? How much are they spending on marketing? Those are the big two pieces, right? What does that translate to? What are they getting average per client? How many clients they have to serve? And does that actually make it possible in 2 hours a day, or, as you're saying?
Yeah, so 20,000 a month, depending on where you live, you're going to be able to charge approximately, I would say 3,500 for a trust estate planning package. Now, I've got students who live, I've got a student in Wyoming of all places who's charging 5,000 for a basic living trust package. So 3,500 is about the average. And if you're listening to this thinking, there's no way I could charge 3,500 for a trust in my area, take my course. We'll teach you how to communicate the value of your services. But if you're just using, $3,500, that's 6 clients a month, right? Now, actually servicing 6 clients a month in estate planning, assuming you're using drafting software, you've got a paralegal who's doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you, is not that much work, right? And we actually we've got a spreadsheet in the course that kind of shows, how to break down what you as the attorney should be doing versus what someone else should be doing. So it's 6 clients a month. And in terms of the marketing, because you're right, that's the other big piece of it. Most of my students are not at a big law firm. They don't have a big budget. Even if they've been practicing for a while, they don't necessarily have or want a big marketing budget. But the nice thing about estate planning is that you don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money on ads. What I do is I teach my students how to drive traffic to their events. And, how do you drive that traffic? Well, you've got a bunch of different options. Some are paid, some are free. What we teach is just reaching out to local groups in your community and advertising your events locally through those groups, as opposed to running Facebook ads, which are pretty expensive and probably don't have the same impact that maybe a personal injury attorney would have. So, for example, there's a group that I advertise with here in New York City called Park Slope Parents. And my ideal client is a parent of minor children. So I just look for local parents groups, and there's parents groups in every single state, right? And a lot of them have an events calendar that they're looking to fill, or they've got advertising that they're looking to sell. So with Park Slope Parents, they've got about 10,000 people on their email list, and I can buy a dedicated email for about $150. Right. So that's the flip side of it. You want people to show up to your events, but just like you said, there's no point making 10,000 in revenue if it costs you 8,000 to do it. So we teach you how to get those marketing costs down. And once you get that dialed in, getting 6 clients a month shouldn't be that much work.
Yeah. So at 6 clients a month, you're just over 20K in revenue, right? So are we assuming that you're running your practice pretty much expense free? Is the attorney doing everything? Do they have help to produce the work for the clients? What's the model that, because if they are serving 6 clients a month and they don't have help, is it realistic to be able to do everything, meet with the prospects, make the sale, serve the client, gather all the documents, put the trust and the will and trust together, and then go through the signing? Is that realistic to do in 2 hours a day? Let's see, in 20 days a month, right? So it's a total of 40 hours in the entire month.
Yeah. So it seems like it's not enough time, right? So what we teach is these are the things that the attorney should focus on. The attorney should focus on what I call educating their community, right? And that's either hosting events in person, via, webinar. And a lot of these, if you're doing a webinar, can be on demand, right? So in theory, you can be driving traffic to your webinar that's just running on demand, and someone could end up watching it at like 3 a.m. or something. So yeah, the attorney needs to be educating their community. And then the second piece is they need to be getting the close, right? They need to host that initial client consultation that educates the prospects on their options, talks about the fees, talks about the process, gets a yes or a no. After that, the attorney also needs to do the design meeting, right? So that, because there's going to be more legal counseling that happens when you actually meet and design the estate plan. That's about it. The things that can be outsourced and should be outsourced: the document drafting, right? Because if you're using drafting software, which I recommend, by the time you get to the actual part where you're drafting, it really is just data entry, right? So that's something that can be outsourced to a virtual paralegal. The document drafting should be done by someone else. You should also be paying someone else to book speaking engagements for you. It can be someone else's job, and we train this, and we train, your staff how to do this in my course. But how do you find these groups, right? How do you get your events out into the community without spending a ton of money on ads? We teach you how to do that. If you have a really great paralegal, you can teach them to do that for you, and it can be their job to book speaking engagements for you. Even the signing ceremony doesn't have to be done by the attorney. It needs to be done, in person. You need to sign a wet copy, and you've got to have the witnesses and the notary. But that can be outsourced also to a paralegal. The answering of the phones should be, outsourced to either an answering service or, if you've got an on-staff person, but an answering service works just as well. So there are things that you're going to have to invest in. You're going to have to invest in drafting software, a software to host your events. You're going to need malpractice insurance. I do recommend having a virtual assistant to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So there are going to be expenses, but those are kind of flat expenses. They're fixed, right? So they're not really going to go up the more business.
Right. So all those things add up. So for a firm that's set up in that way, what is their monthly nut for those expenses approximately? Like, what's the range? Is it 3,000? Is it 5,000 a month? What are they spending on that?
I'd say about 2,000 a month, and the thing that's going to make that go up a lot is the marketing piece. So we're going to try to give you tips on how to do the marketing. Again, my marketing budget is literally like $150 a month, because whenever I need more business, I just throw an ad up on Park Slope Parents. So
Okay. But you mentioned a virtual assistant. Is that a full-time VA?
So it's up to you. I think that a part-time VA is enough. And it can be a virtual assistant, it can be a part-time paralegal. But again, the things that you're going to want them to do is the drafting, because it's going to take some time to draft the documents, even though it is mostly just data entry by that point. And then, to the extent that they can pack your events for you. And the way that I recommend doing this is, first of all, teach them what to do, but then second of all, incentivize them. You can tell them, for every person who hires us who comes through one of our webinars, you get an extra, $100 bonus. The right person is going to take that and run with it, right? But they can be part-time, maybe
Okay.
$25 an hour, something like that.
And then talk to me a little bit more about the webinars or versus in-person workshops. Which is the preferred method, and how do you get people in the room, either in person or virtually?
Yeah, so I think that both are great. I mean, for a long time we only did in person, right? And those have their certain benefit because people are there, they see you. They also tend to be more expensive, right? You've got to find a space and all of that. I'm not opposed to doing in person, but having said that, I do think, the whole steak dinner thing is not necessarily the best idea. I think that's a little bit outdated. But, if you could, for example, go and present at your church or, just a local, school or something like that, and there's already a bunch of people there who are going to be interested in hearing you present, then by all means, show up in person. But then the flip side of that is you can do everything virtually, right? So you can have a webinar and you can present the webinar either live, or you can pre-record it and then just, run it kind of on demand, evergreen from your website. And then how do you get people to show up? Well, I think, there's that's the trick, right? This is kind of the magic question here. And the first thing that I tell people about this is that, there's a couple of things. One, there's no magic bullet. Anyone who's been doing estate planning for a while knows you're going to get business from webinars and from people who find you online. It's going to come from all different ways. But, events are a great way to sort of educate your community. Getting people to show up, one is you need to figure out who your ideal client is, because your marketing copy needs to focus on that person, right? So if your ideal client is a parent of minor children, your ad copy is going to be talking about guardians and things like that. If your ideal client is, a senior citizen, your ad copy is going to be different. Maybe your ideal client is a high net worth individual or someone who's a business owner, but you need to think about that first, because your ad copy is going to be focused on that. Now, it doesn't mean that other people aren't going to land in your lap. They will, but your ad can't speak to everybody. So then what we teach, so then how do you get in front of those people, right? And there's a whole bunch of ways. You can run Facebook ads, you can run Google ads, you can, do all these different things. What I like to teach, because most of my lawyers don't have a big marketing budget, is again, looking for these local groups in your community. And there's a whole bunch of different ways you can do it. And one thing that I think is super interesting that's happened now is that, if you think about parents groups, for example, there's always been a ton of parents groups on Facebook, right? But it was hard to get in front of them because they didn't necessarily want an attorney kind of barging in and saying, oh, can I, advertise my webinar in your group? Sometimes they said yes, sometimes they said no. Well, I don't know if you knew this. I didn't know this until about 4 months ago. But a lot of these groups now on Facebook have sort of figured out how to monetize their following, and so a lot of them are actually, you can pay to advertise in their group. One group I saw recently in New York has like 5,000 parents, and for $40 a month, you're allowed to advertise your events. Right. So with the right ad copy and the right language, you can drive people to your events that way. So there's a lot of different things you can do.
Yeah, very interesting. You got to figure out who the owner of the group is. Often it's not so obvious, who's the right person to talk to. But I like the guerrilla marketing tactics are, like getting down and dirty. If you don't have the budget, or if you recognize that, hey, I can do this without spending, thousands of dollars on Facebook and Google, unlocking or thinking of these ideas of other ways to access the audience is really the name of the game, because you don't need that many clients. So you don't need that many people to show up to your webinar. Obviously, not everybody who comes on the webinar is going to be buying, and not everybody who registers for the webinar is going to be showing up. So you do need to get a certain number of people there, but you probably don't need hundreds of registrants a month to make this work. Speaking of which, can you back into the metrics a little bit for me? Like, what if somebody wants 6 clients on the end? What would they typically need to have as far as people registering for a webinar throughout the month to translate into 6 clients at the end? And I know it's going to be different in every geography, every target market, so you can't give me, hard and fast rules, but give us some ideas of what that looks like. How many people do we need to actually register to make this work?
Yeah, I'd like to think of it as, I'll give you the numbers first, and then I'll give you a little bit more of my opinion about it as well. But I think, like a third, right? You get 21 people who register, you're probably going to get about 14 who show up. And then, depending on how well you're able to convert, maybe 6 clients from that. If the better you are converting, obviously the better success you're going to have. And that's something that a lot of lawyers do wrong, I think, is when they're hosting events, whether in person or virtual. They just get up there and they speak and they give some information. They usually do it in a really boring, dull way that doesn't really resonate with people. And then here's the real problem. They finish with, okay, thanks. If you have any questions, give me a call. Because they feel like anything beyond that is salesy, and they shouldn't be doing it. What we teach is you've got to have a very strong call to action at the end. You've got to spend at least 10 minutes at the end of the event selling the next step in the process, because you've got to remember, with estate planning, most people aren't ready to hire you. They may not even be ready to come in for a complimentary consultation, but they are willing to at least attend an event. So then at the event, what's your goal? Is to get them to take the next step. And so you've got to have that strong call to action. So I would say if you can get in front of, 30 people a month, that's a good starting point to get six clients. But there's another thing that I wanted to mention, and you sort of hit on this, which is that don't think of your webinars as a popularity contest. Quality is better than quantity. And every now and then I have a student who's like, I'm advertising my event and only 10 people have signed up, and they're somehow disappointed with this, which I think is weird, because if you had 10 consults on your calendar, you'd be thrilled, right?
Right.
But what I tell my students is that, I've had events where 70 people showed up and I got over $80,000 in business from it. But I have hosted so many more events where 3 people showed up, but all 3 of them hired me, which is with my pricing is over $12,000 in revenue. Right. So I wouldn't focus as much on, there's not a ton of people here, and instead focus on, what are you saying? What is your call to action? That's going to matter just as much, if not more, than how many people are in the room. And again, you're right. If your goal is to build a 9-figure practice, well, what I'm saying isn't really going to resonate with you. But if your goal is to make $20,000 a month and still be able to coach your daughter's soccer team, just get 30 people in a room. That should be enough to get you 6 clients.
Yeah. Very interesting. And I'm just wondering, because not everybody is a natural, right? Not everybody can get to when you get 30 people who register, get to 6 clients on the end. How, for somebody who's green, who's never done this before, how long will it take for them to refine their process to get to that point where they got the right call to action, they got the right messaging to drive somebody to actually show up? What's the time frame there that somebody should expect to step into this?
Well, I think you're going to fast track your success if frankly you have a coach, someone like me. I give my students my actual presentation, right? So I give you my 90-page PowerPoint. And so that's going to be a very good starting point, because I don't want my students wasting their time putting together a bunch of, trying to put together an entire PowerPoint that's going to take forever, especially if it's not one that is even going to convert. So I would say I teach my students, like, this is my presentation. I teach them how to present it, what to focus on, how to present their call to action. And then I think it's just going to be a matter of practicing and understanding that it's okay if you're not sort of a natural in the beginning. I mean, I always tell the story of, my very first presentation I gave. It was in person. It was in, early 2017, right after I opened. And I had 6 people show up to a church on the Upper West Side here in the city. And I was so nervous, I thought I was going to pass out. Like, I didn't want to be doing it. I did it because I knew it was the best way to get business. So I think the people who are going to be successful at this are the people who are willing to get a little bit uncomfortable, willing to step outside their comfort zone, and then just be yourself. I mean, as cliche as it sounds, whatever your personality is going to shine through. And it doesn't have to be my personality. It can be yours. But that's what people want to see. They want to see that you're honest, trustworthy, smart, a good listener. To the extent that you can convey that, you'll start to get better. And then it's just a matter of dialing in and tweaking the process.
Yeah, very good. So one of the challenges that estate planning attorneys have is, I get somebody in the room, they listen to my presentation, and they have to think about it.
Yeah.
So there's, and because they're not locked up in jail, right, with criminal law, or they're not trying to get out of the house with their spouse and family law, right? There isn't an immediate emergency most of the time. People don't have that sense of urgency when it comes to making a decision. So they got the education, they're sold on the fact that they need an estate plan, but they're not compelled to make the decision today, which tends to lead to a long period of time of follow-up and trying to just get them back to the table to get them to move forward with their estate plan. What do you teach your students to do to overcome that, to compel people to move more quickly, to get them to take action today?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And that's what I always say. You're in the beginning, you're going to hear a lot of, we need to think about it. And I don't know about you, but that got very old to me very fast, because my time is so valuable. And I was like, I don't care about losing the business, but I do care about losing my time. So there's a couple of things. One is that there's some tricks that you can use. A one-time offer, right? So at the end of my presentation, after I've spent quite a bit of time selling all the benefits of the next step in the process, even if you're just coming in for a consultation, these are all the benefits of the consultation, make it a no-brainer. But then you can basically say, book your consultation in the next week, and we'll waive, you'll get a $250 discount on your planning, or, but that's only open for the next, I don't know, week or the next 72 hours or something like that. So you're going to have enough people who are like, I know I want to do this. We're going to do it anyway. Let's just do it. Let's just get it on the calendar in the next week and save $250. And then the other thing I think is to get people to move forward is really making it very clear what the process is going to be, and that it's going to be as easy and painless as possible. Right? People have never done an estate plan before most of the time, and they've almost certainly never worked with an attorney. So they just don't know what to expect. Right. So this is why I spend quite a bit of time talking about, this is the process, and this is how many meetings you're going to have, and this is when payment's going to be due, and everything is going to be signed within a month. Help them paint that picture of where they are now versus where they're going to be, and how good they're going to feel when it's all done. And, you're right. There's going to be some people who just drag their feet forever. And there's only so much you can do with those people. But I think either a financial incentive to get them to move forward faster, and then also painting the picture of how good you're going to feel when it's all done. And this is how easy our process is. 3 meetings and you're done, something like that.
Okay, very
It's
good.
always it's always going to be a hurdle. It's always going to be a hurdle. And some people are like going to be like, I'll just do it on LegalZoom. And those people, don't even worry about those people. Just focus on the ones who want to work with an attorney.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm hearing you say is you got to have a fast acting bonus. You got to have something that's compelling people to be like, oh, I don't want to lose out on this opportunity. And we're, take advantage of that. All right. So as we get to the end of this episode, great conversation. Thank you, Laura, for being here. I leave with two parting questions for each of our guests, always the same. And the first is, what's one parting piece of advice or wisdom that you have for our listeners today? And the second is, how can they take the next step of finding out more about how to work with you or getting in touch with you if they want to investigate what you're sharing further?
Yeah, so I guess my parting wisdom is sort of an overarching wisdom for attorneys everywhere, and that is, it's okay if you don't want to be working at the big law firm, or if you don't want to be building a 9-figure practice. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with either of those things. But I think the first step in all of this, you've got your law degree, what do you do with it? How do you mesh it with the life that you want to have? If you are thinking, I'd be thrilled just to have an extra $10,000 to $20,000 in the bank, which quite frankly is a lot of money. Like when I first started, I would have been thrilled to be doing $10,000 a month, right? So think about that. And if you're thinking, I'd like to do something with my law degree that's helping people and that's interesting, but I also want to have a life, consider adding estate planning as a practice area. I like to think of it as like a tool that you have in your tool belt. I find it very comforting knowing that I could be 70 years old and I could still be earning income doing estate plans for people. And it's not going to require me to have a full-time job at a big law firm, or anything like that. So think about that. And if it's something that you'd like to add in to have a lifestyle practice, we're here to help. And the way that we help is with our online course and our coaching. We're starting to see really, really great results for our students in the 9 months we've been doing this. And, we've got people in the course who are brand new. I have law students who are interested in taking the course. They haven't even passed the bar yet, and they're already interested in taking it because they see it as kind of a estate planning practice in a box. We've got people who've been doing it for 30 years who are making changes, right? So you can do all of this even if you're new to estate planning. If you want to reach out, learn more about my course and my coaching, just go to 2hourlifestylelawyer.com. And so that's 2, the number 2, and then ourlifestylelawyer.com. And basically the first step in the process is you'll go on there and you'll see a link where you can book a discovery call. And that'll be a call with me. And it'll just be a chance for me to learn more about you and your practice and what your goals are. And if we think that we're a good fit to work together, then we'll talk more about the course and the coaching in our community.
Awesome. I love it. Folks, we're going to link that up in the show notes. So if you look in your podcast player in the resources section, you'll see everything that we discussed linked up there. As well, you can go to profitwithlaw.com, check it out there. And we recently launched our YouTube channel, which is also called Profit with Law. You can find us on YouTube, and you can find this interview there on video as well on our YouTube channel. We're here every Thursday, bringing amazing guests like Laura to you. So make sure that you hit the subscribe button in your podcast player. You're subscribed to the show so you get notified the next time we release a new episode. And we will catch you next week. Take care.